So my name is Tamsin Mather. I'm a professor of volcanology at the University of Oxford, and I study volcanoes. Welcome to my exp. One of the stories that always chimes with me, so being a geologist, if we're out doing field work, we're always very careful about making sure we have the right permits to pick up rocks. But sometimes you want to bring back far more rock than you're really allowed to bring back, because it's also interesting and it's also vital. And there's a story of one of the NASA astronauts who spotted a really interesting rock when they were driving the lunar buggy, and they pretended to have a problem with their seatbelt in order to stop the buggy, to adjust it and pick up the rock and bag it. So it's informally known as the seatbelt basalt. And I think is a great example that you're up there in this most extraordinary place, sitting on the moon, driving a lunar buggy, and still you have that rock lust that we geologists feel sometimes when we're tramping through landscapes on the Earth. So that made me feel enormous empathy for NASA astronauts. I think the first journey to another world will be absolutely fascinating. So we've been to the moon, which is our companion in space, but it's very, very much smaller than ourselves. And going to Mars will be the natural next step. So Mars, again, is a smaller planet than Earth, and it's further away from the sun. So it's actually lost much of its atmosphere because it's smaller. Its volcanism died out, or the most of its volcanism, the major part of its volcanism, died out a very, very long time ago. So it hasn't had that replenishment of its atmosphere. It's also had different history in terms of its magnetic field, so more of the atmosphere has been sort of stripped off by the solar wind and things like that. But one of the really fascinating things about Mars is because we don't have plate tectonics, so we don't have plates moving in the same way as we do on Earth. It's actually allowed on Mars the very largest volcano in the solar system, a volcano called Olympus Mons, to grow. So Olympus Mons was probably driven by a hot spot in Mars's mantle, and this hot spot fed a volcano, a little bit like on Hawaii on the Earth. But rather than on Hawaii, you had the plate moving along with a sort of trail of volcanoes in its wake. On Mars, because there was no plate tectonics, it's just built this one enormous structure. And just to give you an idea of the scale, Olympus Mons is about the size of France in terms of its footprint on the planet. So it's actually so large that it was visible from Earth with telescopes even before we sent probes over there to have a look at the planet more close up. So I think studying our nearest neighbours in terms of planets will give us new insights in terms of the evolutionary pathway that Earth has been on. So Mars, as I say, is much smaller than Earth. Venus is about the same size as Earth, but has gone on a really different trajectory in terms of its planetary evolution. So the surface of Venus is absolutely searingly hot. The atmosphere is incredibly dense. It's such an inhospitable environment that probes that we send down to the surface of Venus only survive for a matter of hours. So it's an incredibly challenging environment to operate in. It's an incredibly challenging environment to study. We've actually studied Venus really using radar. Has been the main way that we've studied the surface of Venus. So actually, as a candidate to go to, although Venus actually is more similar to Earth and would tell us more about how their evolutionary pathways diverged, I don't think we have the potential to go there, and we certainly don't have the potential to send a manned mission to Venus. Whereas we've sent probes to Mars, we know there's a lot of potential to actually put humans on the surface of that planet. And really start to take the geology apart and understand the history of Mars in a way that could illuminate Earth's past and illuminate the way that planets develop. And then understanding more about that really it's about our origin story as a species. It's about what is special about here And that's going to be enormously informative as we start to look at planets outside our own solar system, with more and more information coming in about exoplanets from various telescope missions. So volcanoes are a planetary scale process. There are lots of different ways that volcanoes change a planet. They move elements around from different parts of the solid planet, but they're also really instrumental in building an atmosphere, which is incredibly important in terms of the surface environment and keeping the surface environment warm enough, keeping things like liquid water on the surface of the planet that we think is really, really vital for many forms of life that we might conceive, and certainly life as we know it. Volcanoes, I think, also teach us about the potential origins of life. So we don't really understand how life really got going on this planet. There are various different candidates for where the first molecules of life might have evolved. And some of those candidates are deeply volcanic. So I think about the black smokers within the oceans, where you have these mineral-rich and hot fluids coming out into the oceans, and you get very altered chemistry. We also have things like volcanic lightning that back before biology was able to fix nitrogen and phosphorus and things for ourselves. Things like volcanic lightning might have actually given those molecules and nutrients that we need for life. So volcanoes, I think, might have the potential to be instrumental in directly kicking life off, but they're very certainly instrumental in building the sort of environment that we need to be able to evolve life. And certainly to be able to evolve complex life, such as ourselves. There are so many questions about what's coming next. I think I am really driven at the moment about understanding volcanoes in deep time, and particularly these really, really large volcanic episodes, these large igneous provinces. So we could discuss the relationship with mass extinction events, but actually they have a relationship as well with other signals in the geological record. So smaller scale extinction events, but also things like ocean anoxic events, where the oceans of the planet lose all their oxygen and lay down these very dark layers in the geological record. And also shifts in the carbon cycle that we can see in things like the carbon isotope record. So I'm really motivated at the moment to try and understand how all these different mechanisms are working together, and what it is about the volcanic activity in terms of the carbon fluxes, for example, that come out of them, and at what pace they come out of them, and how that's driving that change. And that drives me because of a fascination with thinking about how our planet has evolved. It drives me because of a fascination of thinking about the sort of randomness of how life on this planet has evolved, because without the big five mass extinction events, we would not be here as humans. The age of the mammals would not have occurred. So it's part of the sort of fascination of thinking about our origins and how we come to be here, and the sort of almost vanishingly small chance of that happening. But I think it is also about trying to understand more about how the planet works for the future. And trying to understand more about what we as a species and our carbon emissions and the perturbations that we put out there as well, in terms of cycles like the phosphorus and nitrogen cycle, how all these different changes that we're instigating will interact together and govern the future of this beautiful world we live on.